Everyone, Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed the holidays. Feridun, good to have you in town, my man.
It's good to be here.
This is the first time we get to do a podcast together.
In person, yeah.
How are you enjoying Toronto?
I'm enjoying Toronto well. The weather's great.
Good, man.
Yeah, a lot better than Calgary.
So we're going to start this year off with doing a podcast on failure. Because failure is not that bad.
No.
As long as we fail the right way for the right reasons. So I actually got asked by quite a few people to do a podcast on failure because everyone knows, it's not failure as long as you keep trying, and it's not failing as long as you learn from it. Absolutely. And those things are true. But it's also important to recognize that, like I said, if you're going to fail, you should fail for the right reasons and the right way. For example, if you drink and drive and then chalk it up to a learning experience or as a failure, it's really not good enough. No. It's an inexcusable act. You know everything there is to know. You know drinking and driving is absolutely stupid. There's no excuse for it. So you can't just say, well, you live and learn. No, you could kill somebody or you could kill yourself, and it's a huge problem. So that's not good enough. But given the right circumstances, failing the right way for the right reasons, it will definitely be a great learning experience. So let's talk about that a little bit further. Yeah. So the first thing to recognize about failure is that failure, much like success, is transitional. So you don't fail and then end up in that state forever. Most time, at least with business anyways.
Of course, yeah.
So it's a transitional state. You fail and you learn from it and you do move on. And much like your success is not an end-all be-all either. You don't attain any one degree of success and then stay in it forever. You either have to keep working at it to remain there, or you're going to move on to the next project and deal with successes and failures. So it's important to understand that, hey, it's transitional, and look at it that way, understand it that way, deal with it that way, and don't let either one, failure or success, to become too dominant of a mindset. So now, I mentioned this earlier, failing the right way for the right reasons. And using that easy example of drinking and driving, which is definitely failure for the wrong reasons. The way you can fail the right way for the right reasons is by ensuring you don't fail because of lack of preparation, or in other words, failing for the wrong reasons. If you don't prepare and you fail, that's not really learning from failure. You weren't prepared. So sometimes you may not have an opportunity to prepare, as well as you want, but you should always try and prepare the best you can given the circumstances. You also have to be aware of your circumstances. For example, if you live in today's world here in Canada and you want to start a business built around payphones, it's probably a big mistake. I mean, it's unlikely. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but in my view, based on my understanding, cell phones are pretty dominant, and you really don't need payphones as much. So building a business around payphones is probably not going to be a great endeavor. So you have to be aware of your circumstances. Now, learning from failure is extremely important, and it's important that you learn from your failures, but it's important that you learn the truth about why you failed. Not that, oh, I failed, I'm going to do better next time, and have that optimistic view of it. That's great. But for example, if you're late to every meeting and then the meetings don't go your way, you might look at every single one of those meetings and come up with a reason why you failed. You might be like, oh, well, the first one, the guy was in a bad mood. The second one, they didn't like our product. The third one was this and that. But maybe it's none of those, and it's the fact that you were late to every one of those meetings. So you have to understand why you failed. What was the root cause of the failure? I mean, maybe that wasn't the greatest example, but it helps illustrate the point in that you have to realize, if you're going to learn from it, learn the true lesson, not just the superficial lesson. And make sure that you don't fail for the same reasons over and over and over again. Right. But also be aware when you're succeeding at something that you don't get into this repetitive pattern.
Discomfort.
Yeah, where you just blindly repeat the same process, because that can fail. That can lead to unnecessary failure as well.
Right.
If you try something and it yields great results, we're human beings. We have the tendency to say, "Hey, let's do that again because it yielded results." And sometimes you fail to recognize that, hey, circumstances have changed and the same effort may not yield the same results.
Yeah.
The same process may not yield the same results. You have to be adaptive. People who fall in love with their process sometimes fail to see those realities, and they fail to adapt, and they fail to learn. So your successes can be just as detrimental as your failures. So you have to be aware at all times, and if you've prepared the right way, you're aware of your circumstances, then if you fail, it's okay, and you should learn from it, and in a case like that, it can be tremendously powerful.
Right.
The other thing with failure that needs to be addressed is the concern with fear of failure, because a lot of times, fear of failure, in my opinion, is actually worse than failure itself, because at least with failure, you tried something. Now, let's be real, like if you try a big move and you haven't prepared for it and you fail, harshly, then that could be hard to recover from. So taking those, making those kind of mistakes is not good. But being so afraid that you don't take any steps, that's definitely not good.
Right.
So how, in my opinion, how you can deal with that is twofold. Aside from the preparation and all of that, which will help. I mean, if you're prepared, you're going to be less afraid of failing. You're going to be more confident. But if you've done everything you can and you still have that fear of failure, first thing you need to know is what is at risk here. So if you're risking, if you're going into a sales pitch and you're trying a new approach, are you risking not getting this one prospect? Or are you risking something greater, like creating a terrible reputation for yourself? So you have to recognize what is at risk here. And whatever that worst case scenario is, make best friends with it. In your mind, accept it and be prepared to deal with it, so that you go into it with that knowledge, with that preparation, with that mindset, and should you need to deal with it, then at least you're prepared and it's not as catastrophic. So that leads me to my other point with this, is that you always have to assess what is at stake and be prepared to take on the risk that's embedded in any move you make. So if your entire life savings is $30,000 and you happen to need it for some loved one's healthcare or something critical, and then you decide to risk the $30,000 in some bet in the stock market or something or other, that may be too much of a risk at stake, and should things not go the way you want,
there wasn't much to learn from that failure.
Yeah, and it could be detrimental to your ongoing adventure. Yeah, because it might stop you, it might set you back so drastically that you need significant time to recover. But I found that especially in business, if you do your homework, if you mitigate the risk, if you're prepared, you think about everything at stake, then if you do give it your best and you fail, you're actually going to be okay with it. And you're going to take comfort in the fact that you did your best. And that's actually a little bit of a psychological twist to all these things too, because a lot of times people don't actually do their best, because they're afraid that if they do their best and they fail, they have to face the reality that they're just not good enough. Yeah. They have to deal with the fact that I did my best and I still failed. And that's a hard pill to swallow. So some people consciously, or most often subconsciously, don't actually do their best. Yeah. They leave a little bit of room. They create a safety net. Yeah, and if then when they fail, they think, well, I hadn't done my best. But you need to understand that if you do your best and you do fail, you're actually not going to feel that way. At least I haven't met anyone who does. You're going to think, great, I did my best. At least I can take comfort in that. And now my best is better because I've learned from that experience. Yeah. Absolutely. So don't be afraid of giving it your very best. Don't be afraid of preparing to the best of your abilities and then having to deal with certain kind of failure, because it's part of the process, and that is when you learn and you move on. And it is how you strengthen yourself and you better yourself. So failing the right way for the right reasons is a powerful tool, and it should be looked at like any other part of life, any other part of the journey, and it's okay. And you should have a mindset that allows you to try and fail, assuming you've done your homework, you've done all the right things.
So let me ask you, in your own experience, what's one failure that stands out to you that's really significant, that you think has had a big impact on you and your business?
That's a good question. I kind of wish you'd asked me that before. So, actually, one thing that's interesting is and this might come off silly because it might sound small, but it did have big impact, like you were saying. So one of the early on when we started the business, we chased after this one prospect for quite some time. And it wasn't an easy prospect. We finally got a meeting. It was in one of the big buildings downtown. We were thrilled to just be able to get in there.
Happy to be here.
Oh, yeah. And when we got there, we were prepared. We had done everything we needed. We had a demo ready. We've got everything we needed. We go into the meeting, and the lady asks us for our business cards, which we didn't have.
Right.
And I will never forget her face, the way she turned, and she was completely uninterested in the rest of the meeting. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but she literally threw us out. Like, she wrapped up the meeting and threw us out. Like, she had no interest in hearing.
You were wasting your time.
And I couldn't understand it, because I was like, well, we started this business. I can print my own card. I can put King of the Universe on there. Like, what's the difference? Like, what does she care if what I have? But I realized that, that's all she has on me,
right,
to know who I am, and I should have a card, and it should be a true representation of who I am. It should be an honest representation of who I am and my position.
And you learn the weight that card carries in that world.
Absolutely. And so in my mind, it was like we have done all the big things right. We've got a demo set up. We did everything we needed to do to get the meeting. But then we go in there, and the smallest thing, quote unquote, the card, all of a sudden causes us the entire opportunity, costs us the entire opportunity. So I realized and that, hey, while it might seem small to me, it's not small, period. And every little thing counts. And you have to cross your T's and dot your I's and be prepared.
Right.
And everything goes into that preparation. So from that point on, I learned, why should I not give myself the best chance by looking professional? I'm going to wear a suit and put on my tie, and that's okay if no one gives me a contract because I look professional. At least I don't want to lose one because I look sloppy.
Right.
If I'm clean shaven and I wear my hair short, then I'm going to keep myself clean shaved and get my hair. Yeah. So why should I lose points on the small things? Why should I now think about these little things and be prepared fully? On that point, when we hire some younger individuals, oftentimes I notice that they're a little bit afraid of making mistakes. And I try and put their mind at ease that, hey, if you do your best and you make a mistake, it's part of the process. But I do make a point to tell them, make a mistake where it's worth it. Don't make a mistake misspelling someone's name in an email. That's an easy mistake to avoid. You're not going to learn anything from that. Don't lose any points on something you don't need to lose points on.
Right.
Don't lose any points looking sloppy. Don't lose any points being late. Don't lose any points not having your card. But if you're going to fail on something that actually yields results, actually gives you a learning experience. So it's important to do all the little things, be prepared. But hey, man, when you do fail, like my card experience, we didn't think it's a big deal, but it was. Yeah. But you know what? Since then, I've learned a lesson.
Never made that mistake again?
No, I go into a meeting, I have my cards, I try and dress the part, I have my pen and pad, and you know what? It helps, and
that's just it. Sometimes things happen, so they never happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that wraps up what we need to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
Failure is part of the process. Don't worry about it too much,
and I think it's particularly relevant because that's what you're going to start out experiencing the most. Especially starting up, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to
absolutely. Like failure is no different than success. It's part of the process, and you move on from it. Like I said, it's transitional. It's just that sometimes people there's a lot of motivators out there, which are all great, but sometimes there's an overly optimistic spin put on it, and 100% failure is a great tool, and you can learn from it. But don't fail for silly reasons.
Right.
Fail the right way for the right reasons. Do your homework. Be prepared. Think about the risk. What is your worst case scenario, and then give it your very best shot. And if it happens to not yield the results you expect, then that's okay. Learn from it and do better next time.
I think you summed that up perfectly.
Perfect, my man.
All right.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you guys part of this again, and looking forward to a great 2020.
All right.
Happy New Year, guys.
Take care.